Cover me in clover, seal it my luck. Oh, we know what we have, forget the rest. But they keep telling us, don't hold your breath. Let's just breathe easy. Oh, breathe easy. Let's just breathe easy, like we always wanted to. Let's just breathe easy. Oh, breathe easy. Let's just breathe easy. I can fall into you. Count all our lovers, let us go. Forget every number. Keep this one close. You leave me speechless. The words I must confess. Oh, they keep telling us, don't hold your breath. Let's just breathe easy. Oh, breathe easy. Let's just breathe easy. Like we always.
Good morning, everyone. And in celebration of Mental Health Awareness Month, PVP offers this free webinar on mental health entitled Quiet Quitting in the Workplace. How is it related to employee mental health? My name is Anne Chang, and I will be your host and moderator all throughout this webinar. Before we start, let me give a brief introduction of who we are. PVP is an insight, solutions, and training company, and we specialize in three areas. We have workplace mental health, organizational development, and market research. We use our core competencies in data analytics and our bias for science-driven approach and methodologies in our solutions and interventions. That's why we always say we offer right data and deep data to our clients and partners. Now, these are the services that we have alongside our three areas of specialization. We have services in workplace mental health, in organizational development, and of course, our services in market research. Our client portfolio includes companies from different sectors. We have banks, financial institutions, telecoms, hotels, FMCGs, and manufacturing companies. We have also served quite a number of government corporations and agencies. So, important reminder for this morning before we proceed, let me remind everyone that the entire online workshop will be recorded. As part of Data Privacy Act, we will be needing your consent. Please type agree in the chat box to give us your consent to the recording. Rest assured that we are keeping all of this confidential, and if we are showing this to other individuals or groups, we will remove your faces and names if you do not wish your names and faces to be shown. Okay, house rules for this morning. Of course, we have to listen attentively. And please mute your microphones. Use the chat box if you would like to say anything. We're also saying hi to our friends who are watching via Facebook and YouTube. And for this morning, our speaker is none other than Dr. Marshall Valencia. Dr. Marshall is a social and organizational psychologist with 20 years of professional experience as an HR and organizational consultant, a trainer, and social scientist. He is the Director for Research and Analytics of PVP and also a faculty member in the graduate program of the Psychology Department of the University of the Philippines. He was a former faculty and Director for Research at the Nottingham University Business School. He has published his researches and presented in scientific conferences in Italy, France, Germany, Switzerland, USA, Australia, South Africa, Japan, Thailand, and Malaysia. So without much further ado, let's all welcome our speaker is none other than Dr. Marshall Valencia.
Hi,
Good
good
morning, Dr.
morning.
Marshall.
Thank you, Anne. Let me just share my screen. All right. Magandang umaga, no? to everyone here. So I presume hindi kayo quiet quitters. Kasi nandito kayo eh. Not at all, no? A sign of someone who's quiet quitting, no? Someone who wants to learn, someone who wants to explore. Ako, malayo yan sa quiet quitting. All right, so good morning. Kamusta po ang ating mga araw? Friday na. TGIF na tayo. Thank God. Ganun ba ang ating pakiramdam? Kapag kayo ay, you can't wait for the day to end, you can't wait for the week to end, is that already a sign? Simptomas na ba yan ng ating quiet quitting? All right, now, yung simple definition niya ng quiet quitting, ito yung idea that napaka-Western ng terminology, no? Acting your rage. Okay, acting your rage instead of subscribing to what we call the hustle culture. The hustle culture. Kung napansin nyo, how were we brought up? Ano yung mindset, worldview that we're so used to? Diba? Yung when you enter the world of work, ano yung turo sa atin? Hindi man explicitly, pero parang nararamdaman natin yung mindset na, you do your best, put in way the extra mile. Okay, but we never question that, the assumption na hindi pa dapat to be more efficient, just put in enough of your resources, okay, to deliver the expected outcomes. Saan nang galing yung idea that we have to overextend ourselves? And in fact, over the years, habang lumalaki, habang tumatanda tayo, parang the idea there is you really need to sacrifice, to give up some parts of you, some aspects of your life in order to succeed. Then of course, it's another question. Ano yung definition natin of success? No? Now, here comes this idea of quiet quitting, acting your age, and parang kinokontra, yung very all around encompassing hegemonic na hustle culture. And lately, mukhang lumabas nga yung term nito, especially in the context of ito, nung medyo pawala na tayo sa pandemic, doon lumabas yung idea na ito. But the fact is, hindi ever since naman may ganun na tayong mga notions, medyo na-highlight lang. There was something in the context of the pandemic that highlighted this kind of issue among us. All right. Can I ask you to sign in dito sa Slido, which is slido.com. Just go to that URL. You can use your phone or pwede rin mag-open kayo ng page dyan sa laptop ninyo. And then enter the number 1759415. And could you share your thoughts? What do you think are some signs of the so-called quiet quitting? Kung ano man yung pagkaintindi nyo at this point. Na either nakikita nyo sa sarili nyo or perhaps napapansin nyo sa mga kasamahan sa office. Alright? Always late. Traffic naman lagi Yes. Demotivated. Bilis mag-out or extended break. Yep. Not attending to important meetings. kulang sa motivation, on a rush umuwi. Yep, just going with the flow, right? And there's a term there, burnout, daming reklamo. Gusto lagi ng holiday. Ala, who doesn't want a holiday? Ayaw nyo ba? Hindi ba naka-flat out na yan? Inaabangan natin yung announcements, no? How many holidays? Kailan, no? Tapos naka-ready na, no? Ibubook na natin yung ating piso fare sa Cebu Pack. Yes, waiting lang sa sahod, tinatamad pumasok. Robotic execution of work. Okay? Sweldo na lang ang hinihintay. Yep. Hindi bang sino naman ang hindi umaabang sa sweldo? Day by day mindset, no more long-term goals. Ayaw ng change. Ayaw ng new projects. Yes, low productivity. Ikan ko kanina, skip ako. Daming reklamo. Gusto na mag-resign. Pero nandiyan pa rin. Poor performance. Palagi na lang sinasabi magre-resign na siya. Pero hindi pa rin. Alright? Now, nakikita natin no, yung mga general patterns. And we can probably say, ito yung mga pinagsusulat nyo, these are things na, di ba we've come to accept na hindi kaaya-aya. Pero yun nga kaninang gusto kong i-pose yung tanong, kanino nang galing yung value na yan, no, na ay hindi yan katanggap-tanggap, no? Yes, kung mga performance ang pinag-usapan, pero for example, delivering what is expected, pero not way beyond than you expect, kanino nang galing yun, no? Yung ganung notion, no? Yung nagla-log out on time, hindi ba dapat mag-log out tayo on time? Isn't that a sign that efficient ka sa trabaho mo natatapos mo on time? In fact, pwede mong sabihin, yung panayang overtime ay ibig sabihin sila ay hindi nakakatapos, hindi sila efficient. Ang daming waste siguro na oras, wasted work, no? Wasted time. That's why kailangan nila mag-overtime. Right? Pinapasa ang trabaho, yes. Negative na yan. No? Checking LinkedIn for other opportunities. Passive aggression and withdrawal from cooperation, looking for other job options, doesn't want to volunteer anymore. All right, so yes, no? And itong another question siguro that you might want to think of, to what extent are you guys guilty among itong listahan natin? All right? To a certain extent, di ba? Many of these things that you listed down here, you could put a tick mark. Pero it doesn't mean na quiet Twitter na kayo. Diba? It simply means tao po tayo, and at certain points and certain stages, we do break, in a sense, no? Nag-bend tayo, no? Nadudurog din tayo because of continued stressors that are happening around us. And sometimes the pressure is not just from the outside, but the pressures could also come from within us. No? It goes both ways. So guilty din tayo at some point. But ang aabangan natin, ang titingnan natin is persistence. Ibig sabihin, tuloy-tuloy na ba talaga yan? Habitual na talaga. Yung pagiging late, habitual na ba yan? Yung nagmamadali lagi, yung can't wait, no, for things to get over, pagiging uncooperative, is that a habitual pattern? Kasi once in a while, we do fall, no, for moments or stages in our career na may ganun tayo. Right? So yun siguro ang isang distinction, no, that we might need to consider. So if you look at some of the common write-ups lately that are coming out in terms of quiet quitting, tugma siya sa mga binanggit nyo kanina. Yung parang exemplar dyan is just doing the bare minimum. Clocking out exactly at 5 p.m., 6 p.m. or kung ano man yun. And all the more nga, medyo na-blur ngayon dahil working from home, parang wala nang clock in, wala nang clock out dyan. Unwilling to work overtime hours, but then again, there's this question na, teka, work from home nga wala nang blurring of times there, no? Sobra-sobra nga Overtime na tayo ng overtime madalas. Unwilling to perform tasks or take on responsibilities that are not included in the job descriptions. Ito rin yung tatanong ko sa inyo. Sino sa inyo ang hindi magrereklamo kung binabagsak yung mga hindi nyo naman dapat na trabaho, di ba? Well, most likely, patagulang tayo, no? Nagrereklamo, nagre-react. Kaya lang, minsan may iba na talagang nag-blurt out, so yun ang pinupoint out natin. But come on, no? Most of us will have that feeling na teka, hindi naman sa akin yan, bakit mo pinapasa? Right? Unwilling to perform tasks or responsibilities that are beyond your job descriptions. Only doing tasks as specifically prescribed in their contracts, yung masyadong magulang, maisip. Unwilling to hustle, grind it out, or go above and beyond. Right? So yan po ang mga signs, no? Now, if we dig deeper into this, let's call those parang manifestations or symptoms. Ano ba talaga ang nature nito? Okay? It boils down to two psychological experiences, which is engagement and burnout. Okay? Yung dalawang yan, they are actually, pwede mo siyang tingnan na halos, but not quite. They are polar opposites. In fact, in the scientific literature, binabanggit nga na parang there is actually parang may thin line lang between engagement and burnout. Of course, we associate engagement more on the positive side and burnout is on the negative side. Okay? So at the extreme end, you can be highly engaged, highly motivated. Pero yung sabi nila, pag extremely engaged ka, aba, you will have a tendency to cross over to the level of burnout. Right? And burnout is, in a sense, can be seen as a reaction to over-engagement. Okay? Kaya nga sabi, burnout is actually the antidote, the antipode of engagement. So laging magka-partner, no? Yung dalawang ito. And where is quiet quitting there? Quiet quitting is actually somewhere between the two. No? Kung nakita nyo kanina yung mga symptoms, yung mga binanggit ninyo, they are somewhere, no? You can lodge them between the two psychological experience of engagement and burnout. Therefore, in order for us to understand and be able to address, I'm sure, marami sa inyo yun ang pinoproblematize ninyo, no? How do we deal with quiet quitting in the workplace, no? Whether for yourself or para sa offices ninyo? Well, the answer is focus on these two constructs, no? Engagement and burnout. So in fact, from an academic standpoint, quiet quitting for us is nothing new. No, it's a part of an age-old domain of studies, but we label it as under engagement and also under burnout. Okay, so let me just give a brief technical background, no? Kasi in order for us to be able to address quiet quitting, we need to look into the nature of both engagement and burnout. Now, yung classic view of what employee engagement is, it's something which it's a motivational construct, no? But it is actually made up of three components. And these components are vigor, absorption, and dedication. Okay, vigor, absorption, dedication. Now, what is vigor? Vigor is the energy part. Having the energy. It can be, it's physical. Having the energy to put into your work. Absorption is more internal in a sense that what extent do you go into a flow when you are producing or when you are at work. Okay, yung parang lumilipas ang oras ng mabilis ba o bumabagal dahil you love what you are to be into the job. No? So yun yung three different components. So usually when we really measure engagement, we need to look into these three dimensions. Now, the energy part, which is vigor, absorption, and then the extent of dedication. Now, that is engagement. The antipode, which is burnout, the classic conceptualization of burnout is in terms of three components as well. So the first component of burnout is exhaustion. In fact, when I listen to people, when they talk about, nag-burnout na ako, or yung common notion natin of burnout, actually, I think most of us are referring only to this component, exhaustion. Yung pagod na pagod ka. No? Yung lupay-pay ka na, yung ubus na, yung pudpud na pudpud ka. That is the exhaustion. Right? It's actually both emotional, psychological, and physical exhaustion. Yep, yan ang common notion natin. But, hindi natin napansin na meron siyang two other components. Ang tinatawag nating depersonalization. Depersonalization, ito yung parang dead ba ka na? So what? Ano ngayon? Nawawalan ka na ng sense of attachment, sense of meaning. Yung parang, sige, bahala na. Come with me. Go with the flow. Right? That is a sign of burnout as well. And take note, you don't need to be exhausted, completely depleted to start feeling depersonalized. Pwedeng full of energy ka pa rin, no? Nandyan pa rin yung energy resources mo, but you just simply don't care anymore. Right? So that is depersonalization. And then the third component ng burnout, yung reduced personal accomplishment. You don't see the joy, you don't see the meaning of what you are doing already. Again, these two, depersonalization and reduced personal accomplishment, can be independent. Iba siya sa emotional and physical exhaustion. Right? So we should be aware of these two other components of burnout as well. Kasi usually hindi natin ito nililabel as burnout, but it is an integral part of burnout. While they tend to go together, but they can be independent as well. Right? Now, take note, when you put the three components of engagement and burnout side by side, mukhang magkatapat nga sila, no? So, the vigor part of engagement, for example, diba, siya yung energy part. So, true enough, pag naubusan yan, pag nawala yan, exhaustion ang mangyayari. Yung absorption is being into the thing, so work mo, sa organization mo. Depersonalization is, you move out, you get detached, depersonalize. So parang, extreme end siya. Dedication, ang opposite yun naman is a feeling of, well, hindi quite direct opposite, but parang nandun sa other side is the reduced personal accomplishment. No? Take note no, na somehow these two constructs, yung evolution, no, the way we develop our understanding of them, hindi naman sila always side by side ever since. Slightly independent. And yet, no, lumilitaw nga no, na mukhang yung mga components nila are actually, they belong no, to the continuum. Right? Now, let's go back to the realities that we have. No? Ano yung mga nagpo-push? Ano yung mga nagda-drive sa atin? No? Sa mga experiences natin every day. What are the drivers of our engagement? Ano yung nakaka-contribute sa pagiging burnout natin? No? In the past 2 years, no, lalo na nung nag-start yung pandemic, we were collecting a lot of data no, in PVP. And we've had hundreds of organizations na tinulungan namin and in-assess namin no, yung mga kanilang different aspects no, or employee experience, but we were actually focusing on mental health. Kasi yun ang pinaka-salient no, at that time. And we were focusing on 3 factors primarily. It was stress, anxiety, and depression levels of people. And then much later on, we added the component of burnout. Okay? This data represents more than 10,000 employees, no? Mostly nasa NCR and greater NCR region. Okay, so quite diverse yung industry na pinagkuha na namin ng data na to. So our sample size was quite large. No? So we measured stress, anxiety, depression, and burnout levels ng mga empleyado. Now, if you look at the numbers there, for example, stress, 75. What does that mean? Well, it means that 75% ng mga empleyado ang score nila in terms of our stress instrument, normal. Ibig sabihin, hindi sila stressed out. Okay? Despite, you know, the feeling na parang pagod tayo, not necessarily. 75% are okay. Kaya lang, ito yung mga blue, kung 75% yung normal, ibig sabihin may 25% na hindi masyadong normal. No? And then yung hindi masyadong normal, we classify them as either mild, moderate, severe, and extremely severe. Okay? In particular, medyo kailangan bigyan ng pansin talaga ay yung mga critical. And when we say critical, yun yung mga nasa moderate all the way to extremely severe. Right? So, when we isolated those numbers, medyo alarming. Expectedly alarming. Stress, for example, so 25% of the population medyo leaning towards the critical. Anxiety, 52%. Imagine, one for every 2 employees, critical ang anxiety levels. Depression, almost the same, no? Nasa 47%. Burnout, which is a very important aspect no, of quiet quitting. Ito na, makikita natin 34%. 1/3. 1 in every 3 employees are experiencing critical levels of burnout. So that was the state of things no, na lalong na-highlight during the pandemic. But alam nyo, honestly, hindi lang natin pinapansin. But even before the pandemic, nandito na to yung mga issues na to. It has been there. Hindi lang ganun ka-glaring. If we look at data no, prior to the pandemic, it was hovering around 20% no, yung mga anxiety, depression na yan. So ibig sabihin, 1 in 5 talaga sa mga empleyado natin are already suffering. Kaya lang noon, wala pa tayong batas no, na nag-highlight ng mental health. wala eh, yung dismissive pa tayo no, about that. But when the pandemic came, yun, no, conscious tayo na, uy, pwede palang tamaan tayo lahat halos sabay-sabay. You know? And true enough, when we started measuring the numbers are telling us that, oh, it's very real. And in fact, it's a lot higher no, compared to the pre-pandemic times. But it's expected. Anong meron sa pandemic? Siyempre, we have all the constraints, no? All the limitations, the fears of uncertainties that were there, the risk of dying, the risk of infection, the risk for us and for our loved ones. It was very real. No? So nag-compound, no? Economic, social constraints, they were all there. So it was like a perfect storm. No? Tapos naluto talaga no? Yung outcomes. But what was interesting there, nung tinatrack namin no, yung mga figures, stress was quite high nung first 1 or 2 months lang. So nung nag-lockdown tayo ng 2020, stress was really high nung April at nung May. Pero alam niyo, pagdating ng June of 2020, all the way until now, ang baba na ng stress levels ng mga tao. So in a sense, nag-adapt na tayo. Right? But anxiety and depression, syempre nag-spike talaga siya no first 2 months. And then after that, bumaba ng konti, but it was quite high consistently. Up, down, up, down. But it was there, anxiety and depression. Burnout is actually a symptom, it's a manifestation when stress is continued, chronic, tuloy-tuloy. No? And it will happen, no? Mag-burnout ka kapag ang resources mo internally is not enough to continually, put off the impact of stress. Stress is normal. We encounter that every day. In fact, stress is to a certain level quite good. Nung na-energize tayo, it pushes us, na-heighten tayo. Kaya lang, pag sobra na at chronic na siya, so kung ang boss mo ang source of stress at araw-araw, you have to interact with your boss. Aba, chronic na yan. Araw-araw nandyan, no? Pinapound ka. Up to a point, you might break. No? If your internal resources is not enough, then mag-uumpisa na, no? Magsiset in na yung burnout. Right? And that's where quiet quitting will come in. But remember, burnout has 3 components, no? So the stress is not just, hitting us, no? Yung tinutumba yung emotional, tinatama na emotional exhaustion natin. No? But stress will start to move us, no? Na-depersonalize tayo, nawawala yung belief natin, a sense of efficacy sa accomplishments natin. Right? Another interesting pattern that we saw, look, it's the younger ones who gets affected the most. Across all these dimensions, right? So when you talk about quiet quitting, which is somewhere in between engagement and burnout, underneath that, it is really driven by psychological mental health issues. Stress, manifestations of anxiety, manifestations of depression, kasama yan. Okay? In fact, malaking driver yan. When we started looking at the drivers of burnout, yes, there are a lot of drivers external to us. But within our companies, within our organizations, marami din. Kasi most of the time, most hours of the day are spent in the organizational context, kahit online pa yan. No? So when we started looking at our data there, makikita natin na ano ba talaga ang nakaka-burnout sa mga empleyado dito sa Philippines. I'm talking about the Philippine context during the pandemic, lalo na. And we measured a lot of factors, employee experience factors. Pero ito yung lumabas sa analysis namin. When empowerment is low, yun, tumataas ang likelihood that an employee will develop critical levels of burnout. Okay, sense of empowerment. In fact, if you look at the numbers there, 5.27x, meaning you are 5 times more likely to develop critical levels of burnout when you feel that you are not empowered. The second one was career development. Perceptions na may movement ka naman, may promise of movement, career development. Ang laking bagay din. Right? In fact, the impact factor there is 4.6. Right? So you are 4.6 times more likely to burn out when your perception of career development in the company is low. Third, related to empowerment is voice. Feeling mo ba napapakinggan ka? Feeling mo ba may boses ka in the context of your team, in the context of your unit, your organization? Right? And the fourth predictor or driver na may kinalaman sa organizational context is of course workload. But interestingly, ang effect ng workload, you would say the more the workload is, the more ka dapat na mabu-burnout, di ba? But no, actually, it's quite opposite. Pag masyadong mababa ang workload mo, doon ka nagde-develop ng burnout. Medyo counterintuitive, no? But actually, if we dig through the data further, it's occurring at both ends. When there is not enough workload and when there is too much workload, nandoon nagmamanifest yung high levels of burnout. In short, you need tamang-tamang levels of sources of stress workload. Now, item number 5 and 6, in fact, highest in terms of impact itong, I just labeled it as hobbies because when we captured it, we asked questions like how much time did you spend watching movies or watching K-dramas na nag-Netflix. And pag nasusobrahan, tingnan nyo, when an employee watches more than 8 hours in a day, kasi naging favorite pastime ang Netflix, yung mga K-drama. Ang lakas ng impact sa burnout, 6.7 times more likely. Okay? But when you don't watch movies at all, or you don't do Netflix at all, ang lakas din ng impact, 3.9. So anong ibig sabihin? We need those kinds of distraction or pastime, but in moderation. Pag more than 8 hours, lakas ng impact. Pag wala, it's a sign as well. All right? Now, there are other drivers, but it's a lot lower yung impact niya, kaya hindi na namin nilagay dito. If you look at the first 4, those are things that your organization can do something about. It's within your control. You could design interventions, you can do something. These are actionable. Okay? Yung 5 and 6, well, it's more about the person, but of course, you can do something with that to encourage. Exercise, marami kasi wala na, hindi na masyado nag-exercise. When in fact, ironically, we had more time at that time, nung we were all stuck sa naka-quarantine tayo. And yet, nawala yung component na yun, Malaking bagay. Yung physical, as in physical exercise. Right? So, what can you do? Knowing that quiet quitting is actually somewhere in between, or something has something to do with both burnout and engagement. So ang strategy is to actually treat it as if it is burnout, as if it is the lower end of engagement, right? And if we dig up the scientific literature on that, we know a lot of strategies that could really work, no? Based on, yung mga core human psychological needs. So look at these basic things, no? First, look at the social aspect. Diba? Normal po talaga, no, sa human beings to seek out relationships. In fact, ang sinasabi nga nila, the key, the secret to longevity, yung tumatandang tao, maabot sa 100 and so on. It's not really diet, it's not exercise, it's social network. Having friends. Having friends. It's not the number of friends that you have sa Facebook, but it's having quality friends. In fact, kahit may isa o dalawa ka lang, no, na really, really deep ang relationship, that is already sufficient. Isolation, studies have shown, is equivalent to like smoking 15 cigarettes per day. Ang impact niya sa well-being natin. So when you isolate yourself, wala kang masyadong friends, it's the same as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Ganun kalakas ang impact niya sa well-being natin. Right? So the social aspect is, of course, very important. No? It addresses, no, yung mga core elements dun sa ating engagement. Right? So burnout natin, no, yung sense of meaning is usually attached with people or a sense of accomplishment. You need to find a way to attach that, no, to our networks. The second thing that you can do, no, is provide meaning. Look for value in what you do. Mas madali tayong ma-burnout, no? Mas madaling mag-umpisa yung depersonalization pag hindi na tayo naka-anchor eh. Okay? Kahit gaano pa kababaw, gaano ka boring ang ginagawa mo. But the moment that psychologically you adjust, you attach it to something meaningful. Something like, nalala ko yung Nescafe na ad, no? Para kanino ka gumigising. Kung may ganun kang consciousness na, who are you? Para kanino mo to ginagawa? Diba? Then things start to lighten up. And kahit mabigat yan, parang, para to sa magulang ko, para to sa anak ko. Right? So, from your end, from an organizational standpoint, yep, you can do something about this. Helping employees see the connection of what they do to things that are important to them, not just important to the organization, but important as well to their personal lives. Okay, so we are meaning-making, we are sense-making creatures. So naka-anchor doon yung mga motivations natin. So yung depersonalization part of burnout, the cure there is meaning, having a sense of meaning. Right? The third thing that you can do is taking things in moderation, meaning reassess the way you view what it takes, what it means to have balance. Right? Well, it's easier said than done, no? Prioritize work-life balance. Again, mas kayo makaka-define, no? Ano ba ibig sabihin ninyo ng life, their life? Does that mean, being with family? Does that mean being with friends? Again, it depends on the stage of life you are in. But you have to have balance. You have to find, and balance doesn't mean if you take one from the other side, may mawawala. Yung parang zero sum. No? Na if I take 2 hours here, may mawawala, may masasacrifice. You could redefine your notion of balance in such a way na panalo lahat. Panalo lahat. You don't really need to sacrifice. Okay? But you have to rethink, no? Ano ibig sabihin ng balance for you? And finally, the fourth thing that you can do has something to do with self-care. Self-care means, again, physical, psychological, and social. Right? So physical, nandiyan po yung exercise natin, lumalabas din sa data natin. No? Vitality is part of engagement, yung vigor part. No? It's really physical. And exercise, kahit po 30 minutes a day lang, no? Na ma-experience ng heart natin na ma-elevate siya. That is sufficient already. All right? Hobbies, things that are non-work, that takes us away from, kumbaga parang na-reset, no, yung mind and yung body natin. That's why they were saying pre-pandemic, nung nagko-commute pa yung mga tao, di ba, dito sa Manila, grabe yung commute natin, 2 hours, 3 hours a day. On the one side, you might think that it's totally, bad and stressful, but from a psychological standpoint, actually, yung commute time na yan, yun yung transition period. No? When the mind, the heart, and the body, reset. So may time to do that. And wala yan nung pandemic. And when we were working from home, no? Walang resetting. No? Instantaneously, nag-shift tayo. No? Yung utak from work to the home life. And strainful yan para sa mind, sa atin. No? There has got to be transition. So that's why when you take a break, do something that is totally, nothing to do with your work. Kaya yung mga suggestions na when you are, for example, on vacation, and do take vacations, no? Diba sabi nga, turn off your phones sa gabi. Or turn off your phones or your means of contact sa boss or sa work when you are on vacation. Okay, because we really need those relaxation. That's part of self-care. Okay? All right. Siguro to end the session, ako ikwento ko rin, no? I had my own share of burnout. No? At this point, well, medyo matanda na ako, supposedly. I've learned, no? I've been through a lot of roller coasters in my life, but na-experience pa rin natin, no? Yung mga constant stressors. There was a stage in my life when I was an OFW. OFW ako. So I was working in this foreign university. Was it nice? Oh, yes. No, the environment is different. The perks are there. But it was an academic setting, though. Everything was there. Dito sa Pilipinas, sa mga universities, kami sa UP medyo maswerte na. Ang minimum requirement sa amin is just to deliver 12 hours of teaching per week. 12 hours. That's all. Ang gaan yan, sa totoo lang. Although hindi yan aaminin ng mga taga-UP, kunwari nahihirapan. Pero hindi, ang gaan po ng 12 hours a week na work week. And you have a lot of flexibility. Yung other universities, medyo kawawa, no? They probably teach 18 hours per week. Yung iba umaabot ng mga 24 hours per week. Grabe na yan. Sobrang bigat na yan. But yun ang normal sa Philippines. Guess what? When I was an OFW, ang normal work for us is 4 hours. We work 4 hours a week. So may 4-hour work week kami. Could you imagine how light the workload is? Right? Full sweldo for 4 hours a week. And 4 hours per week ka na nga lang. And then we work 20 weeks a year. Could you imagine? 20 weeks, and for each week, only 4 hours. Ano pang pwede mong hingiin? Right? So dapat ang sarap ng buhay, ang saya. For a time, yes. But after some time, hindi na. Plus, may perks pa kami. In between, we are, may allowance kami to travel. No? So we travel, we are given incentives to travel twice a year. Pero Ano pang pwede mong hingin? Right? Pero after 2, 3 years, I started feeling yung burnout. Not because of the exhaustion, kasi sabi ko nga sa inyo, 4 hours a week and then 20 weeks a year lang. Wala, ang gaan. Ang sarap ng buhay. Ang daming oras mag-exercise. Ang daming oras to pursue your hobbies and all that. Ano yung anong nawala? Yung personalization. Yung sense of oneness and yung connectedness. No? And ako, in hindsight, because the workload was so light, it was so light, it was not enough to actually push you, to motivate you. Kaya ako, kung pinag-iisipan ko ngayon, ano kaya ang ideal? For our work week, you wouldn't want that. Ngayon tayo normal, 40 hours a week, di ba? Kung sa offices kayo. Imagine kung 4 hours, hindi rin yan, hindi yan mag-work. So ako, ang compromise, I think a 20-hour work week would probably be optimal, 20 to 24 hours. So tamang-tama lang. Pero yun yung isang nawala doon, lalo na pag nasa abroad ka, nagtatrabaho, na nawawala yung sense of meaning eh. Yung connection was loose, ang layo mo sa pamilya mo. Yes, may online facilities and all that, but hindi eh. Okay, yung iba pa rin, yung nasa malayo ka. And then, in the end, yung sense of meaning, I started questioning, why am I doing this? Why am I sharing my skills, my talents to help foreigners? Parang ano na, pakialam ko. Pag-graduate nila, babalikan sila mga kanya-kanyang mga bansa, and they will help their own country. Wala namang Filipino dito, hindi nakikinabang. So that's why I came back here in the Philippines, Siyempre, may sacrifice na nandito, ang sweldo, maliit, workload, traffic, all the hassles there. But the sense of meaning is there. Parang pagod na pagod ka, para kanino ko to ginagawa? Naks, mga drama na para to sa bayan. Ay, so yun ang trade-off. Dati, I refused to acknowledge that it was burnout because I was saying, I'm not exhausted physically. I can't be exhausted physically. But depersonalization was there. So, ang sense of accomplishment na wala na rin. Ganun po siya ka-powerful. So, we have to take care, dun sa lahat ng aspects na yun. So, make sure you fulfill your basic psychological need for connectedness, that's the social side. Have a sense of meaning. Take things in moderation. May balance. And then the physical side, self-care. Kasama na rin yung psychological self-care there. Right? So with that, I open the floor. We have just siguro 5 minutes ba? And
Yes, thank you, Dr. Marshall. Very timely topic po, interesting topic this morning. Time check, it's already 11:52. So I think we can open the floor for questions po. Okay, so we're inviting everyone here on Zoom, even our friends on Facebook and YouTube. If you have questions, our team is ready to take your questions as well. Dr. Marshall, I'll ask na lang din po this question that we have sa Zoom. I think this is for the slide earlier for overall mental health scores. Yung question po that Miss Jinky Ramos asked, what psychological measures did you use?
Okay. We were using yung, so I presume si Jinky, may baka psychometrician ang background mo, yung instrument called DASS, Depression, Anxiety, and Stress Scale. DASS 21, kasi it's a 21-item measure. And then yung burnout, it was a mix actually, parang naalala ko, it was an tawag din Oldenburg, burnout inventory. These measures are mga scientifically validated measures, so open po yan and free yan sa paggamit sa public. So, yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have here. Hi, Dr. Marshall. Studies show that salary influences the mental health of an individual, particularly burnout among employees. And based on
Mhm.
your discussion, burnout is related to the disengagement of an individual. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, when you talk about salary, kaperahan, parang yun ang immediate thinking no, na parang money, compensation is the solution. Ah, alam nyo, sa dami ng mga kliyente namin, we do these kinds of analysis for many of our clients. Alam nyo, never pa, I have never seen a company where salary compensation was a statistically significant driver of engagement. Never pa lumabas. Okay? Now, bakit? Because while it is a reality, no, na-stressor talaga yan, no, yung kakulangan, pero we will never be satisfied naman talaga eh, di ba? Plus, siguro, context din, ano, here in the Philippines, masyado tayo. Baka nasanay na tayo, no, na ang konti ng kinikita natin at pinagkakasya natin, and like probably 50 to 60% of the population is barely, surviving. Right? So nakasanayan na natin. So what this tells us perhaps is that there are other important things that could compensate, no, for the impact of seemingly economic constraints that we have. So social relationships, social networks, even spirituality, no, very swak sa kultura natin eh. Nakaka-compensate siya. Right? But if you read yung mga nagsusulat na from abroad, they would always say no na ang gamot dyan sa quiet quitting is compensation. Perhaps so it's true for in their context. Kasi big deal probably sa kanila, sa kultura nila. In our case, it is big deal pero hindi siya ganun ka, hindi siya nananaigi. Well, I'm not sure then as well kasi ang 10,000 employees, ayan yun yung mga somehow nasa middle naman. Hindi naman yun yung naghihirap talaga, no, na segment ng society natin. So yan yung pa ang thinking ko dyan. No? A lot of it is a cultural matter. Yep, anything else, Anne?
Yes, I have here. Good morning, Doc. Good morning, Doc. Paano po kapag yung kawork mo, yung nakikitaan mo po ng symptoms ng quiet quitting pero ayaw niya pong i-recognize? Because of this, naapektuhan po yung work niya, pati mga katrabaho niya, instead po sa kanya yung tasks na ipapasa po sa iba yung workload.
Well, just like any other issue, no? Kasi in a sense, I am arguing here, no, na it's a mental health, psychological concern. And just like any other mental health concern or issue, usually naman nasa denial tayo eh. Hindi mo ma-directly masasabi sa tao na parang alam mo, manifestations of depression or anxiety, di ba? So same goes with, alam mo, tingin ko, burnout ka na, no? Or, you are totally disengaged and so on. So, ano yung solution dyan? Just like sa mga serious mental health concerns, no, you could be a facilitator. Hindi naman necessarily ikaw yung professional na gagamot, no? But you could facilitate, the process so that yung recognition, yung realization will come from the person. So, yep, may certain kind of skill. No? And in fact, we are arguing that dapat lahat na supervisors, it's a core supervisory skill. Not like, say, for example, mental health, first aid, it should be a core supervisory skill. So in the same manner, ito, no, facilitating yung encouragement, no, how do you facilitate, no, the process of someone who's undergoing, they are on the verge of being burnout or being disengaged totally.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Marshall. Actually, with PVP, we also conduct mental health first aid,
Yeah.
so we can actually do that for you. Yes, I think it's just a quick time check po. It's 11:59, and I have here a question from Hindola Majunder. Yes, based on culture, status, religion, job, place, situation differs. Are these something very signs of burnout respective of culture, status, religion?
Uh, okay, based on culture, status, religion, job, lay, situation differs. Are these something? Not sure. Are these something very signs of burnout respective to culture? Uh, okay. Meron tayong tinatawag na biosocial psychological model, no? Na when you talk about depression, anxiety, stress, burnout, hindi mo mahihiwalay yung mga factors na yun, no? A large part of it is psychological, biological, pero may social dimension lagi yan, no? Then may psychological dimension. So, all these elements that you mentioned here, no? Yung mga status, culture, they all play out, no? And the manifestations, yes, will come out different. So dapat talagang culture sensitive tayo. No? And even when I say culture sensitive, hindi lang to by, not only by countries and so on, but even within age, no? May age bracket culture tayo. Even, even within social status, iba yung pag-play out. No? Pag ang manifestations of burnout perhaps is different in the lower social class. Well, I didn't show the data here kanina, pero we also found out based on the measures that we were using that alam niyo kung sino ang pinaka-stress out, pinaka-depressed, pinaka-burnout during the pandemic here in the Philippines? It's the class AB, yung pinaka-mayayaman. The class DE, sila yung pinaka-mababang levels of burnout, stress, anxiety, and depression. Weird, di ba? How can you explain that? Sila na nga ang walang pera, sila yung nagugutom, sila yung, di ba, yung kawawan ng pandemic. And yet, sila yung least affected compared to those in the class A, B, and in the middle class. Right? So, yes, all these elements play out. So you need to understand the context of the person that you're looking at. All right, so thank you. I think, Anne?
Yes, it's already 12:02. But can we have this one last question, Dr. Marshall?
Okay.
May chance po bang maging engaged yung mga quiet quitters? How can we move them from being quiet quitters to being engaged?
Yes, definitely. No, sila yung nasa cusp, no, of that yung continuum na yan eh. There is of course always hope because remember, it's a state that they are in. No? So states can be changed. Importante lang you understand the different components and you address. For all you know, it has a lot to do with the drivers of burnout or the drivers of engagement that are unique, that are existing in your own organization. And you have to know your own drivers, and act on those. So yes, they can be moved. No? Hindi naman sila yung totally disengaged. Hindi naman sila yung talagang nasa final stage of burnout, no? Pag nandun na sila, umabot na sa stage na yun, medyo baka clinical levels na yan, baka yun, better no, to let them go or mag-reset na lang sila ng buhay nila. Pero extreme end na po yan. No? Yung quiet quitters are there on the first. Kumbaga kung sa Zoom, sila ay nasa waiting room. Pwede pa po silang totally ilabas or pwede pang isali ulit. All right, so that's it.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Marshall, for sharing your knowledge and your expertise. And of course, thank you to our participants. And I hope that we will be seeing you again next time. Thank you, everyone. And by the way, we would like to also take this chance to invite everyone to our upcoming trainings and webinars. Okay, let us just share our screen. Okay. Yes, on October 25 to 26, we have Executive Leadership Program. And aside from that, we also have we have Tea and Coffee Friday, a Kumstahan session. This will be happening on October 28th. That's 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. This is also in line with our Mental Health Awareness Month. And we also have basic analytics, data visualization, and storytelling happening on November 8 to 10. That's 8 a.m. to 12 noon. And we also have money and mental health, why financial literacy matters. This is a webinar happening on November 11. That's 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. And then we also have basic data analytics for academics happening on November 22 to 23. That's 8 a.m. to 12 noon. And please don't forget to subscribe and follow our social media accounts to get updates. We have of course, our Facebook account, PVPIPH. We have our LinkedIn account, PVPI. We also have our Instagram account, pvpi.ph. And we have our YouTube channel, PVPTV. And of course, our website, it's pvpi.co. And again, thank you, Dr. Marshall, and thank you to all our participants. See you again next time. Thank you.